Hi, my name is Deb from DG Reads, and this is my furry California girl, Kylie. And today we're here ready to do some beach reading. When I was filming my July TBR, I actually got a prompt suggested by my friend Katie over on Bookstagram at 3 Hearts and a Wish, and her suggestion for a prompt was books with a beach on the cover. And in going through all of my books, trying to figure out what I was going to officially add to the TBR, I realized I have a lot of beach covers that I really would like to read. So figured, why not turn it into a vlog theme? We're embracing summer, we're ready to go to the beach, at least in the pages of a book. So I have way too many books here. It's not reasonable to actually read all of these, I don't think. But they're all ones I have, and I would love to get to them. So we'll see how this goes. I'm going to show you my TBR. If I don't read them for this, I'll be reading them at some point. So definitely share your thoughts in the comments about any of these. One of these, as I mentioned, is officially on my July TBR, but otherwise I'm just going to kind of mood read my way through this stack. And possibly, if I come across any others, I might throw something else in. Who knows? My goal overall for July is really to focus on my shelves and books I actually own, with the exception of a few buddy reads. So that's the goal. I do have some additional ebooks and audiobooks that would also fit the idea of the prompt, but I'm really trying to focus in on what I have on my shelves. So the book that I officially have on my TBR for this month is Wait by Gabriella Burnham, and this is a copy that I was gifted by One World Publishing. It's following a young woman who comes back to Nantucket, reuniting with her teenage sister because her mother's gone missing. And then I have a couple others that I'd kind of classify as more traditional summery reads, potentially in the contemporary sense. So I've got The Bookshop by the Bay, and this is by Pamela Kelly, and I received this one from St. Martin's Griffin. And this one, we're following two friends, both of whom have hit some snags in their lives and their personal lives, but when a beloved bookstore on Cape Cod comes up for sale, the two friends join together and reopen it. So this one definitely has very beachy vibes to it. It's a bookish book, I'm assuming, which I do tend to like, so we'll see about this one. And then I have Judy Blume's Summer Sisters, and this is one that I was gifted from Bantam. And again, this one is about friends, or former friends in this case, I believe. I think it is crossing different times or going over a lot of years, but we've got two friends who had a fabulous summer friendship. They were called Summer Sisters, and something happened to go wrong, and now one of those friends is getting married and is asking her friend to come back, even though they really have drifted out of touch, and the friend's willing to go because she wants to know what went wrong all those years ago. So another one that seems very appropriate summer-wise and should be a pretty quick read. I think it's pretty big in terms of the text. I really only know Judy Blume from children's novels many, many years ago, so I'm interested to check this one out. And then I have a couple of thrillers. For me, when I'm reading at the beach, thrillers is what I naturally gravitate toward because they're gripping enough to deal with distractions and keep my attention and all of that. So that seemed perfect. I've got Mr. Nobody by Catherine Steadman, and this is an author I've read from and enjoyed before. This is following a man who is found on the beach. He has no ID and no memory of how he came to be there. And then a neuropsychiatrist is asked to assess him. And he's branded Mr. Nobody by the media. Everyone kind of is drawn to his case. Intrigued to check that out. Malice House, which is definitely beachy, but a little bit of a darker, ominous looking beach. This is by Megan Shepherd. I've had this one on my list for quite a while. I picked it up because Lexie at Books with Lexie has talked very favorably about it, and I'm looking forward to trying this. I did receive the sequel to this one from the publisher, so I'm really hopeful that I really enjoy this and can jump into the sequel. And then I really kind of wanted to try to find something fantasy or sci-fi or something just a little bit different for a beach read, give myself a challenge. and I actually managed it. So for fantasy, I've got Crown of Coral and Pearl, and this is by Mara Rutherford. I've had this on my shelf for ages, so this would be a really good excuse to check it out. Again, not your typical beachy type cover, but I think it's close enough. We've got water, coral and pearls imply the sea. I don't remember a ton about this one. We're following a main character who has really always wanted to visit the kingdom that rules the place where she's from. And she finally gets that opportunity, but the prince is not overly welcoming, it sounds like. And there's political intrigue, a murdered queen potentially, and a lot going on with that. I remember picking this up after hearing a few people really enjoyed it, so I have high hopes for this. And then the last one I have is a little bit of a genre bender, I think, and that is The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton. And this one, again, is a little more of an abstract beach, but I think it's there. Plus, it's a book that I'm really looking forward to reading. And it's also from Once Upon a Book Club, which means I have some gifts I get to open as I read this one. So I'm really, really hoping to get to this as well. This one is set on an island. The rest of the world has succumbed to some sort of dystopian fog or something along those lines. This one island is peaceful and the last of humanity, I think, here, until all of a sudden there's a murder. So I'm not entirely sure what genre this exactly fits into. It's dystopian, which tends to go sci-fi in my mind. It's a murder mystery, I'm assuming, as well. And I have enjoyed this author in the past. So the sun has been out in full force in Southern California recently. So it just seems like the perfect time to do some beach reading, potentially sitting in front of my AC at home, but we'll see how it goes. With that, I'll be back once I've picked a book to start with. I have no clue where to even begin at this point, and I'll bring you some thoughts as I go. I have started my beach reads journey with Mr. Nobody by Catherine Steadman, and I am almost halfway through. It would help if I actually showed the side with the bookmark a little bit, but I got to a stopping point, have kind of gone from beach bum to couch bum this evening, so I think I'm probably done reading for tonight, so I wanted to update you before I take this on the road with me to work tomorrow. I am really enjoying this one. As with, I think, most, if not all of her books, I do go in expecting a fairly slow burn. So that definitely is what we're getting here. We're following mainly two POVs, but really there is kind of also a third. So this man wakes up on the beach. He apparently doesn't know his name. He doesn't have the ability to communicate, even though he seems to understand what's going on around him. And he doesn't remember anything. He's in the hospital. The media has branded him Mr. Nobody. We're also following Emma, who is a neuropsychiatrist who really specializes in kind of amnesia and forgotten memories and those types of things. She's called in to consult on this case, and she can't say no. It's a very intriguing case. It's something that's perfect in her area of expertise, and there's not very many people who have that same area of focus of study. The problem is the place where this man is a city she used to live in, and she wasn't Emma then. Something happened and she and her family had to leave and take on new identities, and it's very vague. That's about all I know about it. She's kind of afraid that all the media attention around Mr. Nobody is going to draw attention to her. It seems like maybe there's some danger that could still be going on as well. So far we've gotten, I think, just a third POV, and that happens to be the police officer who knew Emma when they were younger under her previous name. And he is investigating. He's also married to a reporter who's investigating the Mr. Nobody case. So there's a lot of moving pieces in here, and we're just kind of getting to the point where Emma and Mr. Nobody are meeting, and there's some sort of connection there, and we don't know what that is. So All this going on really has my interest. It's holding my attention. I've actually been really enjoying physically reading this today, and I'm enjoying the audio as well. So I probably will take the audio with me on the road tomorrow, at least for my commute. I think it's the type of book I want to focus on and probably not heavily multitask to. So I'll wind up picking up something else. But I'm hopeful I can finish this in the next day or so and get you my final thoughts then. I tried to film an update this morning, twice actually. First time, Kylie decided she needed to drink and add some water ambiance to our recording. And the second time, I did something weird with the camera and the sound didn't work out. So, let's go for take number 3. I have now finished Mr. Nobody, and I really enjoyed this one. It kept my attention throughout. I do expect with this author a slow burn, and it definitely had that, but it was done in a way where the reveals are made very slowly over time, and that just kept me wanting to know more, wanting to come up with new theories as we got more information. Things in my mind shifted, and in the end, I didn't predict everything. It did go a direction that I didn't expect, which I really enjoyed, and a few of the thoughts that I had along the way did prove semi-accurate, but in the end, it did have a lot of surprises for me. I would really recommend this for buddy reads and book clubs and the like, because there's just so much in here that can be discussed. There's a lot of questions raised about identity and memory and how what you know about yourself impacts who you are. And there's a lot that I would love to discuss with someone who's already read it. So this is something that I really enjoyed, and it gets a really high 4-star for me, maybe 4.5. So this was a really good time. And the benefit to the fact that I'm having to refilm this is that I actually can also just go ahead and give you another update, and that's that I am currently about a third of the way, closer to 40%, I think, of the way into the bookshop by the bay. So with this one, we're actually following 4 different women. It's the 2 friends, Jess and Allison, who come back together on Cape Cod to purchase and reopen this bookstore. But we're also following each of their daughters. And all 4 of these women are kind of in some big changes in their life. Relationships that are ending, jobs that are transitioning into something else, and that just gives a lot of room for new developments. Jess's husband has cheated on her, and her daughter has been fired from her job, so it just makes sense that both of them would go and spend the summer on Cape Cod with Jess's mother and with Jess's best friend Allison, and this whole plan to open the bookshop comes out of that. Allison is working as an editor, but it's a job that's really having to be scaled back. The industry is not thriving, and she loves her boss, but at the same time, she can see the writing on the wall. She needs to look for other opportunities. So with all of that, this bookstore winds up being the perfect opportunity for all of these women. And then Allison's daughter is local. She makes jewelry and has opened up her own shop and just recently bought her own place to live. But her relationship is also kind of in question at the moment. And she's not directly working for the bookstore, but she has some experience with marketing to help contribute to her mom's dream. This bookstore is an interesting setting. I'm liking the book. I think this is kind of the perfect multitask read because I don't think this is the type of book that would hold my attention if I was just sitting down to read a book. But listening to it on audio and doing something else has worked out really well. So it is perfectly summery and perfectly beachy and just a general enjoyable time. My predictions at this point, each of these women is going to have to make some decisions about their future and possible relationships. I'm not sure exactly because it's been a lot of kind of slice of life type situations so far, But I do plan to keep reading, and I will give you my final thoughts. Okay, I finished up The Bookshop by the Bay, and much like when I gave my first update, it was fine. It was very slice of life. It's covering 4 different main characters, all of whom are kind of on a similar journey of rediscovering themselves, figuring out their romance lives, their work lives, their where to live lives. It went in a fairly predictable direction. I think this is a very easy read. It was excellent for audiobook multitasking, but it's not a book that would have held my attention if I just stopped to want to sit and read it on the beach personally. The characters were interesting. They had enough different about them that it kept my attention. I really especially liked the character who was the jewelry designer, since I do enjoy making jewelry myself. I do kind of wish we got more of her. I think she was kind of the character we saw the least because she had her life somewhat figured out from the beginning. She was often there as a catalyst for the other characters. But anyway, I'm ready to continue my beach journey, hopefully with something a little more exciting next, and I'll be back with more thoughts. I am now halfway into Crown of Coral and Pearl, and I'm having a really good time with this one. It's definitely under the category, I would say, of a popcorn YA, very typical YA fantasy read, but I'm enjoying it. We're following Noor, who's one of a set of twins who have been raised by their mother very much to be the most beautiful women in their small island or oceanside community of Verania. This is because in this world, their community is isolated to this particular spot, but they are still subject to the crown from the mainland. They have to produce pearls by diving for the crown. And the other commodity that they have, the princes of the mainland, when they need a bride, they source those brides from this ocean community. And whoever the elders select as the most beautiful, the most appropriate, is sent to the mainland, never to be seen again, and she becomes the queen of the realm. And it's come time, the king is about to pass away. The prince needs to choose a bride. Noor and her sister Zadie are 2 of the 3 potential brides to be selected, though everyone knows Zadie's going to be the one. She is the most beautiful, largely because Noor has a scar on her face that she got from diving many years ago. And she lost a lot of favor with her mother over that, and therefore the whole family is resting their hopes on Zadie being chosen. They get a large bride price for this, and their community is really struggling to survive. They have overfished the waters. There's not a lot available to make money to eat and drink and do all the things they need to do. Zadie doesn't want to go, and she ultimately winds up being unable to go, and Noor must step into her place. It takes quite a while to get there, but I still feel like since it's in the synopsis, none of that's really a spoiler because that's the whole setup of the book. The tagline for this one says, "Steal the crown, save the kingdom." There's been a lot of talk about whether someone in the queen position could help their community because they need food. They're struggling to survive. Their population is dwindling because they can't afford to feed everyone. And Noor has always kind of wanted to see the world, and in some ways she's the more adventurous of the twins, so she's not entirely upset about the idea of having to go, but at the same time she has no clue really what she's getting in for. So this is all going on. We've got, of course, potential here for romance. We've got someone that she's shown some interest in before she leaves, and then of course there's this future king that she's supposed to marry, but he's not the best guy. So it's been a lot of setup to this point. I think it's had a lot of really good discussions about beauty, about self-image, about perfection. Noor, with her scar, which she got in a very noble kind of way, has always been looked down upon in their community because there is such a focus on beauty. So I'm really interested to see where this is going. It's just a fun read. I wouldn't say it's something that necessarily necessarily will stick with me long term, but I'm having a really good time with it. So I'm glad that this beach vlog encouraged me to pick up a little bit more of a darker seascape type of image. Fortunately, I spent the day at work today instead of at the beach, but I did spend some time finishing up another beach read, Crown of Coral and Pearl. I really had a good time with this. It was much more intricately plotted or detailed than I expected kind of going in. I expected it to stay really popcorn, not too deep YA level, and it definitely has those aspects to it. I'm not going to say it's super detailed and intricate, but there is a lot more going on in here than I initially expected. We are getting a lot of politics from the world between Norse people and the people from the mainland, and the way the kingdom works and the way gender politics kind of come into play. I really enjoyed that about it. The prince who needs a wife, the one that Nora is intended to be there to marry, is, like I said, not a great guy. And from that standpoint, a little bit typical kind of bad guy type of character. But at the same time, he does have some moments of nuance. He occasionally shows glimpses of something that you think maybe could be positive, but is he manipulating? Is he not? There's part of me that wonders if that was a little bit too disjointed, like it didn't entirely flow between the positive moments and the really evil moments, but I did like having to kind of question what his motives were in different situations. I really liked the idea of Nor facing her own identity and what that means to be separate from her family, to be separate from her people, to be separate from her best friend, who's her sister, and everything that goes into that. And her trying to find ways within this marriage she's going to have to take on to try to make life better for them. I think she was a great character to follow, and I really liked her story. This is the first book in a duology, and it does wrap up pretty cleanly. Like, I feel like a lot of things have been resolved. There were some twists at the very end that I didn't entirely expect that do leave room for more to explore in the second book. And I enjoyed this enough that if I have enough time to fit one more book in for the final book support group at the end of the month from Steph Loves, I will try to be picking this one up from the library so I can read book 2 while this one is fresh in my mind, and I can finish off a series that way. We'll see about that, but in the meantime, this winds up being a 4-star read for me. It wasn't anything that's going to stick with me necessarily in the longest of terms, but I had a really good time with it and kept wanting to pick it back up and kept wanting to keep reading, and obviously I want to pick up the sequel right away, so that's a good sign. And then before I forget, I might as well say while I'm here that The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton, this was on my list of potentials for this particular vlog, and I wound up picking this up for Summerween instead. So that vlog is already up. I will give you a link for that just in case you were interested in my thoughts in this one in particular, since obviously I'm not reading it in this particular vlog. And I'm planning to pick up at least 1 or 2 more books before this vlog is over. So I'll be back once I've picked my next book and can give you my initial thoughts. I'm halfway into my next beach read with Wait, and I think I went into this one with bad expectations. All I kind of knew about it was that we're following a woman who's reuniting with her teenage sister after their mother goes missing. And that's accurate, but the mother's not so much missing, she's deported. So Elise is graduating college, she's waiting for her mother and her younger sister to show up for her graduation. She's excited about the future, and then she hears from her younger sister that their mother didn't show up to pick her up. And she is missing for a little while, but ultimately we find out pretty quickly that she's been sent back to Brazil. And she's trying to get back to the United States to get back to her daughters. But in the meantime, Elise needs to step up and basically take on the parenting role of her teenage sister, Sophie. And she has a friend that she's been in college with who has a home on Nantucket, and ultimately the story is going to be set there. there. So the setting is on the beachy end. I wouldn't really consider this a beach read per se, in spite of the cover. It is very much a heavier book than I was expecting. I think it's well done. I think once I kind of readjusted my expectations, I am finding it an easy read and a good read. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and continue on reading. I'm just past the halfway point and the bookmark's actually lying because I'm further than that. I forgot because I was on the audio. I do have a PRH audio copy gifted to me as well, so I've been mixing up the print reading and the audio reading. It's the type of book I like on audio because there's not much distinction in here with punctuation, and that doesn't always bother me, but in here there were times where I wasn't quite sure who was talking when, so the audio has been helping with that. So I'm going to continue on and I'll come back once I have my final thoughts. Okay, I have finished Wait, and this one just didn't wind up working very well for me. A lot of that probably has to do with, again, me going in with the wrong expectations for this. It winds up being a lot more slice of life. There's not a lot to it in terms of plot. It's very character driven, which I'm okay with, but I think the characters being so young and a lot of the kind of sibling squabbles or just the interactions between the girls and their friend wind up feeling very young. It's definitely a coming of age novel, and I think if I had gone in with that type of expectation, I might have enjoyed it more. The deportation angle, there's not a whole lot of depth going on with that. The mother wants to get back home, but her children are 18 years old and 22 years old. So she's having to try to convince the government that she's needed as a mother, but her children are adults. And as she's kind of settling in back home where she was, and her kids are kind of making their way in the world where they are, there's not really a ton of tension in terms of will she get back home, will she not, that type of thing. There's also not a lot of stakes in terms of whether the sisters are going to be able to make it on their own. They have this really rich friend who takes them in when they need it. There's some issues that come up with that, but really in the grand scheme of things, there's not a lot going on there. So this winds up being a 3-star for me. It was fine. I think it just was trying to accomplish different things than I expected it to at the beginning. I think it would work better if you're going in for purely a character-driven, low-stakes type of contemporary read. So with this, I am planning to pick up one more book, and once I have my thoughts on that, I will be back. I'm back with my midway thoughts on Malice House, and as I started reading this book, I realized I had no clue what this book was about. I don't know if I ever read the synopsis. If I did, it's long forgotten. Basically, in this book, we're following Haven, who has come to her father's estate, his house, Malice House, to basically clear out his estate. And he's passed away. He was a famous author, and he was known to have kind of lost his mind toward the end, but he has a huge fan base. His writings are in libraries and collections and things like that. He was very literary, it sounds like. So she's really surprised to find a collection of horror stories, bedtime stories for monsters that appear to be a little more fantastical and horror related and a mix of monsters and humans. And she gets the idea, since she's an artist and desperately in need of some income, that she can take this manuscript that her father wrote and she can create illustrations of these various monsters, and it could put together something really cool. The people who knew her father in his life have some really strange mixed reactions to this. He's the type of author who has a strong fan base and sometimes a little bit of an obsessive fan base, and some of that may be coming into play as well. Some of what was plaguing her father were these images of monsters and the idea that there were things in the house, inside Malice House. She's starting to kind of get the sense that there's other things going on as well. We've got some deaths in here. We've got some mystery in here. It's a really fun kind of fantastical mystery horror blend, and I'm having a great time with it. So that's all good news, and I'll be back once I have some final thoughts. I'm here with final thoughts on Malice House, and I had a really good good time with this. It was a really good, I think, blend of horror with some bookishness and some mystery elements and some surprise twists and fantasy. So it really hit on a lot of the buzzwords for me. I think there was maybe a little more length to this than needed to be there. There were a few times where my interest dipped a little bit, so it's not a perfect 5-star read for me. It's more of a high 4-star read, but overall I think it went in some really interesting directions. I can see why there's going to be a sequel. There's definitely room to explore more, while at the same time this does feel like a complete book. I think when this one first came out, it wasn't known that there was going to be a duology out of this, so I'm very curious to see what direction the sequel takes, and I'm hoping I can pick that one up very soon. But overall, this was a high success. And with that, I'm going to bring this Beach Reads vlog to a close. We had a little bit of a mixed experience with this. I had 3 that I really enjoyed and 2 that were just kind of okay. And in the grand scheme of things, I'm not super shocked that the ones that I enjoyed the most were the thrillers, horror, and fantasy out of this bunch. So I think this proves that beach reads can definitely be darker, and I can definitely enjoy them. Thank you so much for taking this virtual beach trip with me. If you can hit that like button below and subscribe if you're interested in more of my content, I would really appreciate that as well. Let me know in the comments below, what types of books do you gravitate toward when you're beach reading or vacation reading? I would love to hear. And do you have any particular books that you would recommend to me? I'd love those as well. So for now, that's it for me, and I will catch you in the next video.